On the engine stand today, we have a 1983 model 911 SC engine. This is a Euro model engine. Supposedly low miles, although there's a couple of things that don't quite support that. But we are going to be tearing it apart and seeing what it needs to bring it back to a 100% new engine. Yeah, so that's a good sign that it hasn't had regular oil changes. The other thing I noticed is we have the ignition timing that doesn't really want to work. It's actually started moving. And you'll see the other difference is the Euro engines run the rev limiter on the ignition distributor as opposed to a US model car that uses a fuel pump relay cutout for rev limiting. Looking in there.
Look at this. There's a head stud.
Yep.
Oh, a head.
Perfect. That's a good catch.
Yeah.
So this is what it looks like when you have a broken head stud.
Wow.
Just laying there in the valve cover area, but it unscrews nicely from the nut. Broken head studs.
Oh. They're just very corroded.
What?
The head bolts, head stud bolts.
The nuts? Yeah, it's because they were unplated.
Oh, why?
I have no idea. So these original harnesses, a lot of them were one long trigger signal wire that runs all the way back to the CDI box plug, which is going to be over here. And some of them will have a short wire that can plug in. If you need to repair these wires are no longer available. So you have to do a patch, put in, use the short green wire, and I would only recommend using the Bosch one. There's one made by Euro out there, but it's not a very good wire, so I don't recommend using that. And then you've got to put a 2-pin plug connector in here. You've got to be very careful when you do that, that you make sure that you keep the correct polarity. One of the common failures is the throttle bushings fail on these. So we'll be redoing that one. So these are the early air sockets that didn't have steel reinforcement in here, and you can see how it's collapsed in. Whenever I see that, I always replace these. It's not a cheap part, it's about a $214 piece, but it will stop this from happening long term. that's ugly. I don't know what somebody thought they were doing there. Oh, yeah. That's holding the crank in. Yeah, there's supposed to be more on the outside.
Oh.
Should be at least 7 shims. We're missing 4. We're missing 3. Not the worst. It's pretty black and disgusting in there.
But it has tension.
There is some filled up in here. You can see where this head's been loose by that black splooge. Means it's been vibrating. It's just easier to take them off now than when the heads are on the bench and I got nothing to hold them. Looks like some pretty significant wear there. Some bushing transfer onto the shaft. Bushing's definitely egg-shaped as well.
Pretty gentle.
What's that?
That's pretty gentle.
Yep.
Hmm.
It's doesn't look horrible. To clean everything to know for sure. Nasty. So the bearing surface here looks pretty nasty. We may be up for a set of cam boxes on this engine, just because it hasn't had regular oil changes by the looks of it. I mean, the inside of it is really nasty. Oh, loose. Loose. Average.
It's like one whole side was loose.
Yeah.
The intake side.
Yep. Yeah, good wear on the cylinder. It's been chattering because it's been loose.
Can you get headstock washers too?
For these ones, yeah, these are the big ones. And the Euro's making the little ones. This one's not as bad as this one. Doesn't matter, one's got to be machined, the other one's got to be machined. You can see where this one's been leaking. It's coming out of this head gasket right here. This black all over the cylinders. You can see this one is fairly clean. Not a lot of leakage. You can see that the head gasket's actually split on this one too. Coming apart. Barrel does not look too horrible yet, but gonna have to clean it up.
You need to light.
Yeah, I do. Pistons don't look horrible, but they're so dirty. A lot of carbon in the oil rings. All right, so that's half the engine down. Hard to really get a good picture on wear just yet, just because there's so much carbon and buildup on over everything. Cam boxes may be a problem. Cams on a quick look don't look bad. One broken head stud on the other side, no broken head studs on this side, though very obvious that cylinder 1 and 2 showing signs of leakage. You can see it as it gets down further towards the back of the engine, how this cylinder was nice and tight on all 4 studs, whereas these ones, the intakes were definitely loose. Heads been chattering, heads will need to be machined. So we're just going to keep going, getting everything else apart. We'll roll it over and get the other side off, and then start the cleaning process, which is the biggest part of this job, no matter what engine it is. So we've got the other side all broken down. We didn't really go into it as far as showing it, because one side is pretty much the same as the other. Same result, other than a broken head stud on this side. We had heads that were loose on one end and tight on the other. The other problem that we ran into is this camshaft right here has suffered some pretty significant pitting. One of the other lobes is showing signs that it is starting. So it's going to need a set of camshafts. This is a lack of lubrication issue right there. Right on the nose is the most amount of load. There was one other here where it was just, yeah, this one where it's just starting to fail through the hard facing. Same thing with the cam boxes. Going to have to do some serious cleaning before I know if they're savable. There is some scoring in the cam boxes. Pistons right now, I don't really know anything until I get some washed up, get some of the grease off of it so they're measurable. I'm not going to have any answers whether or not I can reuse or if they're going to need to be replaced. So here we are at the case, pretty much ready to split. Not a lot left on it. I've got most of the ancillary stuff off. All the head studs on this one will need to be replaced. They're using the early style dialiver on the bottoms here. Tops are going to be mild steel, but definitely want to replace all of those. As far as issues with the case right now, until we open it up, don't know, but we'll find out here in a few minutes. Here's the safety piston out. These are going to be all of the latest stuff anyway, just by the age of when it was first built. So there's no oil pressure update mod, no spring pressure mods. They already use the late model plugs. Just got to inspect for wear. Smells like stinky engine.
Yeah. Why do they smell more than the other stuff?
It just smells like burnt oil. No way to put it. So crank does not look too horrible on a first inspection. I mean, this is very minor just looking at it. Everything needs to be cleaned up, of course. Our countershaft gear does not feel too horrible. But we'll have to clean it up and measure it just like everything else. Inside the case, this is some pretty nasty goop. This is what happens when you don't see regular oil changes and the oil breaks down. And when this becomes a problem is when it breaks off and starts to float around. This kind of honey color up here is not as much of a concern. It's more this stuff that we're worried about, the thick black gunge that builds up and can create some lubrication failure points. So looking at our bearings, they'll tell us a story about the condition of the case. You can see how there's lots of little pits, like something's been through the bearings. This one, you can see a pretty good score. Can feel it with a fingernail where a piece of crud's come out of the oil. This is where our oil pressure comes from. A little bit of off wear on this point, but not enough to really make me worry. But they kind of give you a heads up on how the case was doing, how well the bore is stayed straight. When the bore is shifted significantly, you'll see some really heavy wear patterns going down the whole tunnel, more so on the magnesium cases than the aluminum case engines. Nothing obvious sticks out, but everything's so dirty. Can't tell anyways what's good and what's not. Pump doesn't feel real horrible. Same thing. Got to pull it apart, see what it looks like before I can make any decisions on it. So that was all the easy stuff, getting the thing all apart. Now comes the next serious part, which is a lot of work, especially on this engine. It's cleaning everything and then cleaning it again and then cleaning it some more because it probably isn't clean enough after the second clean. Once I've got it cleaned, then I can start measuring and get an idea on what parts are salvageable. Heads, we've just popped them off. I'm assuming minimum exhaust valves, exhaust guys, but I need to pull those apart and see what they look like. Cam boxes, same thing. They need some significant cleaning to get an idea on if they're salvageable or not. Cams, I already know that it's going to need a set of cams. Crank most likely looks like it'll clean with a polish, but until everything's measured, I won't know. Also got to get the rods off the crank, see what that surface looks like under there. Haven't had a chance to even look at any of the rod bushings or any sizes there. So lots and lots more to do, but at least now we're apart. We've got an idea what we're looking at, and I can start putting some basic numbers together for this customer.
Now it's gone. It's kind of green looking.
That's the color they're supposed to be.
Oh. Is it just an aluminum finish?
Yep.
Interesting. I've seen lots of not green ones.
Probably illegal to do it now.
Oh, it's some
You
sort
know,
of,
in the European Union.
yeah. Keep on cleaning.